But we are in Os Nun Beis, and let me just remind you, it's been a long time and some very important limud here that we did. Yesodos of Rav Tzadok, each one is a Chiddush Nifla. Number one, we're talking about the pasuk and Chazal's interpretation of the pasuk of when Mashiach comes, the time of the Geula. It'll be, the pasuk says, Be'ita achishena. Well-known pasuk, Be'ita achishena, it'll come on time. Achishena, I will rush it. And Chazal say, well, is it coming on time or are you rushing it? That's the question. So the Gemara says that there's two possibilities for the Geula. One possibility for the Geula is Be'ita, deadline comes. And the other possibility of the Geula is Achishena, that Hashem rushes it along and it comes even before the set time of the Geula. Now, that's known. The way it works, to put that in a more Kabbalistic language, is that there's Isarusa de La'ela and Isarusa de L'Sata. Isarusa de La'ela means Hashem makes it happen. Isarusa de L'Sata means we make it happen. And in the world of halacha and ruchnius and growth, there's always two ways. You know what I mean? It's like sometimes it's possible that a person, a completely non-religious person, I mean non-religious, I don't mean, like it could be all of a sudden walk in the street or see something and have this awakening and become a Baal Tshuva. We've seen it. This is not by any work that they've done, per se. It's not because they've studied this and they went to yeshiva and all that, or they even heard a lecture, just like a sunrise, or it's a gift from Hashem. That's called Isarusa de La'ela, and it's very important to Linyanenu. Isarusa de L'Satos means that you get there. You worked your way to getting there, and you've come to a different type of perhaps a more everlasting. And one's not a contradiction to the other. This is the thing, because even if one is zochen, it doesn't have to be a Baal Tshuva. It could be to give some tzedakah or whatever it might be. Even if one is zochen to a Isarusa de La'ela, all the Svarim tell us, has to be concretized and brought into Isarusa de L'Sata. At the end of the day, it has to be ours. But sometimes Hashem jumpstarts it for us. So back to the Geula. If we're talking about rushing the Geula, meaning ahead of its time, I don't know where we are now. I'm not a predictor, so I don't know if we're at the absolute deadline or if we still need to rush it a bit. I just don't know. But let's say we're talking about achishena, means chish. Let's make it a little quicker than it's supposed to be. That would only be because of our tshuva and our tefillos and that would be our coming to Eretz Yisrael. That's Ma'ir the Gula. Kibbutz Goliath is Ma'ir the Gula. All that would be Isarusa de L'Sata. That would come from us. If there's a deadline and we haven't done all of those things, so then Be'ita. That's Be'ita, and Be'ita means Hashem will give us the Geula, whether we deserve it or whether we don't deserve it, whether we're holding, whether we're not holding. Hashem will give us that Geula. So that's the very important to understand that one of the Yesodos we learned, I think it was in Mem Beis, that Be'ita achishana isarusa de L'Sata, isarusa de La'ela. That's the two possibilities of Geula. We also learned, and all these Yesodos are coming to bear right now in today's Rav Tzadok, which is astonishing if you ask me what we're going to learn. But if we're talking about what we learned just in Nun, is that Be'ita, I'm going to read you a line here because I just opened. V'cheinu be'ita linyan bias Mashiach kasher yiu akol tzmeim liyeshuasa. Now this is where you have to start getting like sophisticated here and look at the nuance. That when we're talking about the Geula coming be'ita, meaning force, deadline. So that'll be a case of hakol tzmeim liyeshuasa. Everybody is demanding, everybody is thirsty for the Yeshua. So how does that work? If everybody's thirsty for the Yeshua, is good, no? So that's Isarusa de L'Sata. So the answer is it'll get so. The first answer is it'll get so desperate. The world will become so desperate for the Jewish people. It'll become so desperate, that it'll be hakol tzmeim li Yeshua. We need a Yeshua. We need it now. But you didn't do anything to deserve that Yeshua. You didn't do any tshuva. So what do you mean? Hakol tzmeim li? I'm thirsty. So, but what he says is, and he proves it, that this will be the case of not achishena, but the chiddush here is be'ita. Even though the geula is coming be'ita at the deadline, it'll be a case where everybody wants the geula to come. Everybody wants the Yeshua to come. Another yesod that we said was that, which we explained, was Abaye learned, if you recall, we spent a lot of time on this, that kol hagadol mechaver yitzrei gadol mimenu. So, kol hagadol mechaver yitzrei gadol mimenu. So what we're going to learn today is that applies to an individual who has a huge yetzer hara, and Abaye was taught from Eliyahu Navi or Ahusaba, whatever. He was taught that don't despair if you have a big yetzer hara, because kol hagadol mechaver yitzrei gadol mimenu. That's what the Gemara says. Don't worry about it so much. Worry about it if you give into it, but it's not a bad sign in a person, it's a good sign. How's it a good sign? It's a good sign because there's a certain, you're not verschlafen. If your yetzer hara is working at full at full capacity, you're not sleeping, you're energized, you're ready to go, you're feeling like you can conquer. And those are the midos, the sort of a lot of strength which is needed in order to learn Torah, in order to get close to Hashem. So comes Eliyahu Navi and he teaches in the Gemara. Husava teaches in the Gemara. I think Rashi says Eliyahu Navi teaches in the Gemara that kol hagadol mechaver yitzrei gadol mimenu, that it's actually a good sign for you. Comes Rav Tzadok HaKohen, and he tells us not only with an individual, but the whole door is like that. You're going to have a door. What does it mean? We'll see inside in a second, but we said it already a little while ago. What does it mean that when it comes to be'ita, the door is going to be door shekulei chayev? Let's go back over this for a second. There's two possibilities, the Gemara says. The Mashiach can come in a door shekulei zakai or kulei chayev. So understand this correctly. We always understand it to mean okay, where are we all now? Are we kulei zakai, kulei chayev? Should we all get worse? Should we all get better? We want Mashiach to come. It's two different periods. One's be'ita, one's achishena. If we're rushing the Mashiach b'sarusa de losata, that's got to be kedar shekula zakai. If we're relying on the final deadline of the Mashiach, be'ita, that's going to be a door shekulei chayev. Doesn't mean everybody has to be chayev, but that's going to be a bad door. Right? You understand this? In other words, not the same. Are we kula zakai, are we kula chayev? It depends what we're looking for. If we're looking for the yisarusa de lusato, obviously has to be a dor shekulei zakai. If you're looking for the yisarusa de leila, so that it should be that it can be at least a dor shekulei chayev, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu steps in and gives us the geula. I don't know where we are, but what a dor shekulei chayev. So Rav Tzadok is going to explain. I want to give you the heads up on it. That a dar shekulei chayev is a dar shekol hagadol mechaver yitzrei gadol mimenu. And that's a wow. Meaning, not just like an individual, like Abaye, who was a tzaddik yesod olam, struggling with a certain yetzer hara that he thought tzaddikim shouldn't be struggling with. No. Once we know that the strong yetzer hara is the sign of real godless, maybe it's true of a kid. If you see a kid with a big yetzer hara, maybe that's a good kid. Maybe that's a better kid in a way. No, I'm not just saying chizuk for all of us. I'm just saying maybe that's actually, maybe that's a kid that can become a gadol. More so than the one who's not a troublemaker. Yeah. So, kol hagadol mechaver yitzrei gadol. What about the whole generation? The whole generation is yitzrei gadol, that has tremendous yetzer hara. Okay, so we could say at that generation, in other words, the whole generation is, here's how it works, kulei chayev. The whole generation is kulei chayev. What does it mean, kulei chayev? Tremendous yetzer hara. Okay, good. If a whole generation is kulei chayev, that's your generation, which is kulam mitzapim liyeshuasei.
That's a simon.
A simon that, speak it out.
That's a simon that the Lord is going to be doing
A simon is easy. It's a siba.
But the Zakai sounds like a siba.
The zakai is isarusa de lasata. It has to be a siba.
Right.
So here, we're like so negative. I don't want to say bad, but we're so yetzer haradik that like you'd give up on those doors. A door shekulei chayev. Allah v'akasav aymer. No. Don't despair. It's a good sign. Not a sign is a simon, but it's actually a tool. The way I'm understanding it, it's actually a tool that can be used to bring in the gula beita bisarusa de la'ela. Another nakuda to make it clear. We know that it's a dar shekulei chayev on the one hand. On the other hand, you know what? Let's read a paragraph just so I don't have to say it out loud. Al yitame al yisma, rather nun beis. Al yisma ha'adam. Hold cup with me. Al yisma ha'adam. Don't wonder im yireh b'shayim misrabim ba'olam b'holchim u'miskadlim b'chol yoyim. Don't get so excited about the fact that it seems like we're going backwards and we have a lot of rishayim in this world, and they're getting more and more. They're not getting less and less. For a while, we thought everybody was doing tshuva. Basically, everyone's doing tshuva. So it seems to be that misgadlin b'chol yoyim ki yeda sha'Hashem yisbarach hu ba'al hakarim. You should understand, if you're wondering about this, you should understand that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is the ba'al hakarim. What does it mean, the ba'al hakarim? You have a complicated, you're driving on the highway and you see a vineyard or a farm, and if you're not very intelligent, so you'll say, look at that bulldozer over there making mamish holes in the ground and carting stuff away and throwing dirt on top of it. And you're not understanding that he's the ba'al hakarim. He knows what he's doing. This is what you're supposed to do now. Sometimes you're supposed to plant, sometimes you're supposed to cut, sometimes you're supposed to dig, and sometimes you're supposed to make mounds. That's the way it is. So once you understand that Hashem is the ba'al hakarim, so you understand that it could be that the Rishoyim are Yalav Yisrabe, and yet that's a good thing.
What if there's a lot of weeds?
A lot of weeds. So we're talking about the weeds right now. The guy who runs the field knows better than us. He's always on top of it. And here's where the kasha comes in. Chazal say, Sheben David, it could be a dar shekulei chayev, the yamid melech kasha gahaman, and how will that work? You could have a Haman situation, God forbid. Shiyashuva b'tshuva, and we all do tshuva. Look what happened over there in the Megillas Esther. Like everybody did tshuva. It was wild. They were assimilated.
So is that just the tata or the not?
That's sarusa de la'ela. This is what's interesting.
The prompt is coming and then.
That's right. Meaning we would not have come to this by ourselves. V'harei amru chazal. Let's just stop here for a second. We before we get to the weeds. We have to do. We're a dar shekulei chayev. Our yetzer hara of the dar we're talking about, not you and me. Yetzer hara of the dar is the biggest in history. And in that dar, there's going to be a geula, which means that we're going to do tshuva. So how's that work? Okay, Yamin Melech Gadol Kahaman, we do tshuva, but how are we even holding by doing tshuva? So the answer is, Yetzer hara, Gadol Mimenu, that's a strong thing going on inside of us. And since we have this strong thing inside of us, so then it's possible for us to really become Gedolim and tshuva and have the Geula. Do you understand this? Let me pause here for a second. Do you understand the lumdus? Yeah. Like this, I asked myself, and I actually asked a few other people like their opinion the last few days. What would you say is the Yetzer hara of the door? It's a good question. No, that was the last star. We're done with that. Like,
From community?
no, I'm not, Jews. I'm talking the Frum community.
Believing Netanyahu is
Oh, maybe. It's interesting you say that. What? It's. We'll get to that. He's always loved because he's always
It's funny, I was gonna say
copying me.
lack of authority.
Listen. If you ask people like, what's like the worst thing that? Let's think about it for a minute. You don't think about that? That's the internet. Okay, internet. Or we're like addiction. Smartphones. All bad things, yeah. I mean, but so since we have such an addiction for smartphones, so therefore we know we're going to become Gedolim. It's very Gedolim. So I think you can agree or disagree, actually similar to what I think that the Yitzhahara of the door in particular is koichi v'oitzim yadi asli esachayel. That's what I think is the Yitzhahara there. A form of gaiva where for the first time of history, or memorable history that we remember since the Chashmonaim maybe, we've got an army, we've got allies, we've got smarts, we've got a country, we've got money, we've got an economy, we've got, don't mess. And we like to think that way.
And we have nuclear bombs.
Nuclear bombs, not Amish, a few hundred. So, okay, I think that there's, look, we're B'nai Torah, so whenever you see in the news, we will, so it gets us a little bit annoyed. But in fact, I mean, it's not just like the government of Israel, it's also like people who, build mansions and all good. It's all good. It's good to build Israel and it's good to build mansions, but like you can get to people are going in business in a way of I don't know, I see it all the time. Let's call it gaiva for a moment. But I don't know if it's gaiva, but however you want to define it, there's a koichi v'oitzim yadi. I think that's the Yitzhahara of the dar. Can everyone work with me on that? Yitzhahara of the dar? So kol agadol mechaveroi yitzroi gadol mimenu. So I think that this Yitzhahara of Kochi v'otzim yadi is the godless that we have that's going to allow us to do tshuva and bring the geula. No, noch tiefer. I think that the very midah of, let's call it gaiva for a minute, which is terrible. And the Torah says all these terrible klolos that can happen if we take credit for ourselves. But I think that in itself is the midah that can bring us to tshuva. Why? Why can it bring us to tshuva? Not because we break it. That's not what I mean. And not even because we use our gaiva and we go, with the derech of Hashem. I think if you'll analyze it for a second, most balei gaiva have a very, very weak self-image. Like it seems to be the common denominator of men and women and children that are so full of themselves is that they're really suffering from some type of an imposter syndrome, or in other words, they're not really sure who they are and why they're successful. Is it like? I don't want to, All I know is in my day-to-day, the people that appear to be the biggest balei gaiva are the most broken. I just see it over and over again. They're the most broken, lack of self-esteem. V'haraya, that. Listen, I'm not a psychologist, I'm not a sociologist, I'm telling you what I see, I'm just telling you my own experience. If you look at somebody who's truly secure with themselves, truly comfortable with what they've accomplished, if somebody corrects them, they're fine. They don't have that kind of gaiva. If somebody's not mechabed them, they're okay. They're willing to be vulnerable. If you look at somebody who it feels, whether it is or isn't, but feels that this is all fake, lo magiali, it's all really just a facade, go to criticize that person, and you get kocho gvarase malayalam. It's a fascinating thing that really gaiva is not. When say gaiva is shiftless, and it feels to me that that the whole koichivoy tzimyadi, which is a terrible thing, has this. If that's the Yetzer Hara, I mean, if that's the Yetzer Hara of the whole kind of world that we live in now, the Jewish world, what it really means is that we're broken and sitting and waiting for the Mashiach. That's what it really means. Does that make any sense to you? If not, it's the best I can do. I think that it goes together. The Gvura goes together with the Tzebrachenkeit. And when there's a Tzebrachenkeit, that's the flip side. It's not about breaking it. It means to say that because of all of our gaiva, we have therefore shiflus, and because we have this shiflus, we're mamish open to the isarusa de leila of HaKadosh Baruch Hu to do tshuva. And this kind of tshuva, we're going to learn here in a second, can happen very quickly. A tshuva, which you see, because tshuva also has two kinds. One kind of tshuva is really the vernacular tshuva. For instance, I'm a Baal Tshuva. I became a Baal Tshuva yesterday already. So that's nice. But that refers to, like, they didn't do tshuva. They didn't go through the Rambam and have charat al-avar and kabbalah al-asid and go through vidui at every one of their bring a korban chatos or an equivalent to a korban chatos for every time they were machal Shabbos b'shoigeg for the last 45 years. That's tshuva. So why are we calling them a Baal Tshuva? Why are we making yeshivas called Baal Tshuva yeshivas? So there's another kind of tshuva, which is an isarusa de la'ela tshuva, which means a lifestyle change, like this kind of awakening. I once heard, it made a big roshim on me. I once heard, used to have a big kesher with Rabbi Zohar, Zatzal, and I remember him telling, right at the beginning, very beginning, it was like a celebrity Baal Tshuva, right? And at the beginning, like, it was like, how'd you leave you left your fame, you left your money, you left your parts of his family. He was disowned by society. I mean, it was like a crazy, thing. And he said, when all that's over, that's when I have to start doing tshuva. And he did. In other words, now is the time to spend the rest of my life working on midos, working on charot al-avar, on kabbalah al-asid, on being masak in certain things that were driving me the wrong way. So it's interesting. There's two kinds of tshuva. There's two kinds of geula, and the dar shekulei chayav can easily become really quickly the dar shekulei zakai. It can very easily become the dar Mashiach. So what we've done just now is taken everything that we've learned in the last three prakim for the personal individual. We've turned it into the geula, which is a national change that has to have. Hence, even though we're a dar shekulei, to put it in a sentence, even though we're a dar shekulei chayav, we can also be a dar where everybody's going to do tshuva, and it can happen in a second. Yeah.
Because it seems like we explained the need of is really a lack of self-esteem. So that's an expression. One expression is what we just believe, but then everyone's realizing, not really. It seems like we're saying the core media doesn't change. It's just which way it goes.
Exactly. And the more interesting thing about it is that the core midah, when it manifests, comes out in opposites, literally polar opposites, one from the other. Gaiva shiftless. It's true of every. It's like still waters run deep. Sometimes, like, that guy's such a calm guy. He's the biggest kaisen in the room. So that's what he's saying. Let's intervene here. V'hinei Rabbi Seinu Zal Amru, Chazal say in Sanhedrin Tzadiches, Sheben David Efshir Sheyavei B'dar Shekulei Chayev, that Mashiach can come. That's an option here of a dor shekulei chayev. The Yamin Melech Kashaka Haman. There will be some type of a thing like a Melech Kashaka Haman. Sheyeshuva b'tshuva. V'harei Amru Chazal. And this is like a little interesting tangent here. Eza dor chaviv mikol hadoros. Zador hamidbar. Lashon Yerushalmi. Lashon Yerushalmi is that the door, we all know the door of the that was Makabel Torah, Har Sinai, was called the door Chaviv. Yerushalmi brings a lot of rights. That was called a door that Hashem loved. Door Deo, we tend to say in Chazal language. Yerushalmi says the door Chaviv. So how could it be a door Chaviv? We were just been in the Mem Teshari Tumah. We were halolu of the avodah zarah and halolu of the avodah zarah. We all know that we weren't in any kind of spitz tzadikim over there when we came out of Mitzrayim. Most of us didn't even want to go. So that was a dor shekulei chayev. That was a dor shekulei chayev, and yet that was the dor chaviv to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. He gave us the Torah. So. And the way it works, as I write in my own Pirkei Avos Sefer, the way it works is that the Yetzias Mitzrayim was an Isarusa de La'ela, and we got this awakening. Okay, we saw the Kriyas Yamsuf, we saw the Shechina, we saw everything. Now comes the 49 days of Sphira, and now we have to concretize, internalize, go through a process itself of coming to Kabbalah Satorah. So it's exactly this, starting with the Isarusa de La'ela, which means that you're chayev, that's exactly what it means, and taking that and working it down, that's exactly the Dor Chav. Same thing says Reb Tzadok, we find, Chen al Dor shel Shlomo HaMelech alav Shalom. Now this was a bit of a mystery to me. What does he mean? The Dor of Shlomo HaMelech, shenisbasru l'chayo elam haba. The Yerushalmi says that was also a Dor Chaviv, the Dor of Shlomo HaMelech. So what was so bad about us in the door of Shlomo HaMelech that we were called the door Chaviv? It was like the door of Yetzias Mitzrayim. In other words, Hashem said, I like this door. Build a base of Mikdash. I'm going to help them build a base of Mikdash. Why? Because like Yetzias Mitzrayim, they just went through Mem Teshari Tumah. So the answer is, I think the answer is that, you see, David HaMelech couldn't be the build a base of Mikdash because he had killed too many people, and you see that there was all of a sudden a new start in Avodah Zarah, and there was a lot of bilbul ha'amim between us because there was some peace, and there was, I'm guessing that there was a sort of, Nasana, you agree with me? I guess there was a sort of a Mem Teshari Tumah over there. He's spolulus. And
they asked for a king
it was before David. I didn't know that I hear
to have someone to protect us.
Maybe. I'm really guessing. But Shnis Basru, but by the Gemara says that they were told then that you guys that build the base of Mikdash Nispasru l'chayo elam haba. Lashon Moed Kan Tesam Aleph. Mipnei shezachol l'binyan base of Mikdash. But Ein Sarach Loimer, to our point, you don't even have to say Dara Shel Mashiach Kavachom Dara Shel Vadayeh Chaviv. We are a Dor Chaviv. Efshir Shiyeh. So here's the Hechatimsa. Efshir Shiyeh Kuloi Chayiv. Here we have a situation where we could be a Dor which is Kuloi Chayiv. V'yishapchu l'Dor Chaviv. And the Kuloi Chayiv itself can be the Dor Chaviv. So it's a Dor Shekulei Chayev, but this works on it's a Dor Shekulei Chayev, which Gufa will be the Hisayrus for Tshuva. Why? Because Kol HaGadol Mechaver Yitzrei Gadol Mimenu. So it shows a tremendous godless on our part that we could be so bad. Val korchach shesherish nishmasam must be shesherish nishmasam mimakom gavoya yoser mikol hadayros. So it must be that if we're the ones that are going to be zocha to a geula, like to the end of times, it must be with all our dor shekul chayim, with all our koich v'yotzim yadin, with all the things that we have, all of our gaiva, military, financial, every single way. But we have a good. We must have a shirish neshama which is good, because otherwise we wouldn't even come to those things. You know, the way it's like very classic, Rav Tzadok is, like, you think it's bad, it's good. You think it's good, it's bad. But it's also mukhrach in my opinion, it's mukhrach in, not just in lamdus, but in psychologically so. We see it psychologically so. You see it with an individual, you can see it with a generation. That this can turn on a minute. That's he gives a marshal part. I think that the tshuva meira seems to me, and then we turn it into ava. But I'm giving you like a good mashal. The person says, I became a Baal tshuva when they didn't do any tshuva. It's like an awakening. Sarusa delayla, awakening. Become Baal tshuva. How are you Baal tshuva? You didn't even do the veheshiv v'zakzela on all the things that you stole.
But it says it's going to be a Velcro Haman, so seemingly there's going to be events happening.
Something.
No, it's not just.
We don't have enough events. There will be something, but we will react correctly. That's the point. There will be something, but we will react correctly, which we have not always done in history. Why will we react correctly? Because we're a dor shekulei chayev. How does that work? The answer is because that must mean that we are very great people. To have such a big yetzer hara must see a godless. I guess the sooner we see this in people around us, the less we'll be pushing them away and bring out the godless, I guess. So here's another chazal that he brings. Be'emes kol chatoi Yisrael einam be'etzem. The fact that let's talk about us today. There are chatoi Yisrael, so einam be'etzem. It's not like in its mahus that people are bad. I don't know. I see this every day. I don't know. I'm sure you do too, but I see it every day. Like you talk to even the biggest, Rishoyim, Oichere Yisrael. I don't know about the biggest. I'm going to come and talk to with the biggest. There are some real ones, but even Oichere Yisrael, you talk to them, and all of a sudden, good. Saba Shalik, I'm Ken Chashav Kacha. Get all kinds of. Rakham Shilum Rabbi Seinuzal, the pshat, these people. Chazal said in Sanhedrin Mem Daled is Asa the Koi Beni Chilfe, and Asa is a Hadas. Asa is Hadassim, like Ben Yulul of Hadas. Myrtle. So like an Asa which you're going to find Beni Chilfe, standing amongst thorns. These are thorns. It doesn't. If there's weeds all around, I think myrtles have weeds, not thorns. If there's weeds all around, it doesn't mean that the hadas is not a hadas. But you remember, a hadas is the one in the lulav yesh b'reach ve'ein b'tam, as opposed to the arava, ein b'tam ve'ein b'reach, yesh b'reach, and it maintains its reach, even though it's even though it's surrounded with weeds. So the Klal Yisrael is like Asa the Koi Bein the Chilfi. This Gemara in Sanhedrin Mem Daled is where the Gemara says that Afal Pishachata Yisrael. That even if we do chet, we're still called Klal Yisrael. Why is that? We're called Klal Yisrael because we're not etzem bad. We're just doing bad things.
I think in the Gemara in Sukkot, the first is one called Chilfa Gili, which looks like Hadas, but it's not. So it might be a reference to all the fraudulent.
So the chilfi is what's around it.
Could be referring to the Muslims and Christians and say we're the real chosen one. But it's
So asidakoi bene chilfi, imposters. Yeah. But the touch of it in the Gemara Rashi says is like weeds around the real thing. Yeah, we are surrounded by imposters. but we stay kadosh. L'chein heim ha'yisurim. Just want to finish this off here. L'chein heim ha'yisurim ha'yidei achet sha'choyach oiksa. The yisurim that you get, the yisurim of a chet. What does that mean, yisurim of a chet? You're going for the rose and you hit a thorn. Ouch. So there's yisurim agmas nefesh that comes to us because we did chatayim. In other words, it's not we get a haman. That's what he means. Those are the kotsim that are like we're like. Look, we can feel this today. I mean, everyone, you open the news, you have agmas nefesh. You know, it's tsar, tremendous amount of tsar every day. You know. But these are the kotsim that are surrounding something very, very beautiful, like a shoshana. Tishar shoshana b'shlimusa v'adrabah. We know that a rose that's surrounded by thorns is a better rose than the kind of rose, the type of rose that is not surrounded by thorns. The Gemara says that, the Zayar says that, same thing as the Pasuk says, but the Zayar adds that Mikan, in the Gemara's Machlokes, what's better? Are tzaddikim better or Balei Tshuva better? So the Gemara, one opinion is tzaddikim, you never did a chet, you're better. Another one is Makom Shabbalei Tshuva, Imdim tzaddikim gemurim, Enim Echel Lamed. But the Zayar here in Kisisa Kuf Pei Tes Amud Beis tells us that Kishoshana Ben Achoichim is that the Shoshana that's surrounded by chet in Yisurim is a better Shoshana, and that's according to the Manda Amar, the Balei Tshuva Adifa. That's the Zayar's raya. Let's just finish. Utshuva, this is really the key to the whole thing. Tshuva efsher sheyeh berega echad. This is really the main point. Tshuva can happen quick, on a dime. It's hard to see. I mean, like we're thinking, let's make a Bal Tshuva movement, and I mean, we should do all those things. You know, let's make Bal Tshuva yeshivas and put tefillin on people, and those are good things. But the fact is that the tshuva of Isarusa de Lasata, Isarusa de Leila, the tshuva of the awakening that Hashem gives us, that can happen really quick. All of a sudden, everyone says, "Okay, maybe I will do it," and that's the Dor Shekulei Chayev. Kedemochach Perak Beis the Kedushin. Maybe according to what I'm saying, that the Avera is Koichi V'Oitzim Yadi. So maybe in a second, one can come to this realization. You know what? It's not Koichi V'Oitzim Yadi. Not so hard to imagine. You know, what if Chas v'Shalom, like America doesn't send us bombs? And what if Chas v'Shalom, the military fails Chas v'Shalom? Hashem should give them koach. And what all of a sudden, like, we thought we had all these things and we don't have it. So maybe, and yet we're winning. We're winning. So in a second, if we're not too akshonistic, we can turn into ma'minim from the Koich V'Oitzim Yadi. So he says, Shuvat Efshir Sheyeh Berega Achad Muchach Perak Beis the Kedushin, and this I love this. This is reverse engineering here. Anu Mevakshim, what's Perak Hamadish Kedushin? Famous Gemara. Person says to a woman, Harayat Mekudeshes Li'al Benasha Nitzad Gamor Afal Pishan Rasha Gamor Hu Rasha Gamor Choshishin LeKedushin. So. Everybody asks, when Chas Chinuch, everybody asks on that Gemara, okay, like very nice, maybe he did tshuva, dil mehira b'tshuva, but he didn't say vidui, we didn't say him saying vidui, we didn't see him be'eshiv v'zagzelo, we didn't see him doing tshuva. The answer is there's two kinds of tshuva. That tshuva, that's the process, that's a whole life, that takes a long time. But this guy could be called a tzaddik gomer by saying, you know what, I'm about tshuva. I'm about tshuva. So that's the pshat in that Gemara. Like that answers all the achronim. It's not the pshat that, like maybe he did do tshuva when nobody was looking. The process is a different kind of tzaddik gomer. But the awakening to tshuva, like I've changed. This moment I've changed. So that's called the tzaddik gomer enough that choshish in l'kedushin. That's how we understand that Gemara. Rak Hashem yisbarach siva tzavach shuva. Shuvu. You know this, we'll end with this. You know the Medrash, which talks, famous Medrash, I think it's an Eicharabba at the beginning, and Medrash says, think Rabbi Yaacov even has a song about it, no? Like the Knesset Yisrael is saying, Hashivenu, the end of Eicha. Hashivenu Hashem Elecha v'nashuva. You go first. You bring us to tshuva. Yisarusa Dolev v'nashuva, and then we'll go through the process. That's what we're saying. HaKadosh Baruch Hu says in Zechariah, Shuva Elai, you go first, V'ashiva Aleichem, then I'll come. So who goes first? Who makes the first move? Yisarusa de Le'ela or Yisarusa de L'sata? That's the question. Who makes the first move? That's Gufa, the Shaila in that Chazal. Umistama b'dar shekulei chayev. So now we're talking about a dar shekulei chayev. Let's put the whole thing together. Now we're talking about dar shekulei chayev. So who's making the first move? If Mashiach's coming in a dar shekulei zakai, which would be achishena, okay, we made a move. But if we're approaching the deadline of the Geula, and now it's a dar shekulei chayev, and you want this dar shekulei chayev to do tshuva, so what do we need? We need hashivenu Hashem elecha. That's for sure. That it has to be that Hashem has to make the first move, and then we will process it further. Yes, makes sense. Oz, great words here. Umistama b'dar shekulei chayev. It must be that in a dar shekulei chayev al korachach sheyeh oz didan notzach. Didan notzach. So. Because Hashem Yisbarach Yirtza Rega Echad Yichlu Kol HaKoitzim HaSevim. The moment Hashem wants us to do tshuva, all the thorns around us can be burnt. V'yakol kirtzaynai v'yisgala shegam mashakoydem hayakol l'tzarech. What is it? What does didan natzach mean? These were not words made up by the Lubavitcher Rebbe.
We're gonna win.
One.
Ours won. Our statement was correct.
Didan natzach. At the end, we won. So the reference in the Gemara to Didan Natzach is Rabbi Yossi, I think, was fighting with Kochos Hatuma by a certain Mayon. And everyone will go to a certain Mayon, you know the Gemara? Everyone will go to a certain Mayan and would drown there. And the Chachamim decided that there's a Koach Hatuma there. Ruach Ra. There's a Ruach Ra. So in that Ruach Ra, so it went to fight it and brought other Ruchos. It was a very strange Gemara. Brought other Ruchos to fight with this Ruach, and at the end we won and got rid of that Ruach Ra. So Eilan Oesek, I don't understand the whole thing, but at the end, it was Rabbi Yossi said, Didan Natzach. We won. Our side won. Our side won. So our side won means here, with the way he means it, is in the kind of discussion or even argument with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that Knesset Yisrael is saying, you go first, and Hashem saying, you go first, but here we are, Dar Shekulei Chayev, so obviously you have to go first, and when you go first, on a dime, we all switch to become Balei Tshuva. You can see it happening, we should see it in our day, and then we could all say, Didan Natzach, and that's how we get the Geula, that's the formula for Geula in a Dar Shekulei Chayev. Thank you.
How does that help? Am I sending out what happens to Klal Yisrael after that?
1 second. How do I do this without erasing the whole thing? I'm assuming it was recording. Yeah, 43:58. Just 1 second.
How do you stop it?
Just let it go all day.
No. You're afraid to hit the X?
A little bit.
I don't blame you. Are you sure you want to stop streaming? Do you want to stop streaming?
I think so, right?
Yeah.
But what's this thing going to become?
End.